You hear it everywhere, right? Be true to yourself. It's on posters, it's in every movie, it's probably the number one piece of advice anyone gives. But have you ever just stopped for a second and asked a way bigger question? What is this self you're supposed to be so true to? All right, buckle up, because here's the wild idea we're going to unpack. For almost all of human history, that feeling you have of a deep, unique inner self, well, it just didn't exist. It had to be invented. And figuring out how it was invented tells us basically everything about our world today. Here at the Chronicler's Desk, we dig up the hidden histories of the ideas that secretly run our lives. So, how do you even start questioning something that feels so real? Well, let's start with a little puzzle from our time. The writer Carl Trueman points out that a phrase like, "I am a woman trapped in a man's body," is something we can all understand now, right? Agree or disagree, the idea makes sense in our culture. But 100 years ago, it would have sounded like complete nonsense. So how does an idea go from being literally unthinkable to a core part of someone's identity? It's all about the invisible assumptions our culture is built on. And that brings us to this amazing concept from the philosopher Charles Taylor, the social imaginary. Think of it like the water we all swim in. You don't even notice it's there. It's not some grand theory, it's just the gut feeling, the background noise that tells us what's normal, what's possible, what makes sense. And today, our social imaginary is built on one giant pillar, that who you really are is found in your inner psychological feelings. But trust me, that was not always the water people swam in, not even a little bit. So let's take a trip way back to a world that would feel totally alien to us, not because of the buildings or the clothes, but because of their fundamental understanding of what a person even was. Let's go to a world before you were the center of your own universe. In ancient Greece, your identity wasn't something you'd discover on a soul-searching journey. Nope, it was given to you from the outside. You were a citizen of Athens, the son of a potter. Your whole purpose wasn't to express your unique inner world, it was to play your part, to fulfill your duty to the city, the polis. To be an individual all alone, cut off from that was like being less than human. And this quote from Aristotle just nails it. When he said political, he didn't mean you should vote Democrat or Republican. He meant that a human being's very nature is to be part of the city. A person sitting alone, obsessing over their private feelings, wasn't authentic. They were useless, broken, like a heart trying to beat outside the body. So look at this. It's a complete 180-degree flip. For them, identity is outside you. It's about your role. And the goal is keeping society running smoothly. For us, identity is deep inside you. It's about your feelings. And the goal is to be true to yourself. This wasn't just a small change. It was a revolution in what it means to be a person. So, the billion-dollar question is, how did we get from there to here? How did we even learn to look inside ourselves in the first place? This turn inward, it didn't just happen. It wasn't some sudden philosophical breakthrough. It was a slow, careful process built over centuries using specific tools and practices. You could almost say the inner self was a piece of technology that had to be engineered. And the philosopher Michel Foucault had this brilliant term for it, technologies of the self. And that's such a perfect way to put it, isn't it? Just like we use hammers and computers to shape the world around us, people had to invent mental tools to build and shape the world inside them. These were actual techniques for creating an inner life where one hadn't really been the focus before. So what were these technologies? Well, think about the Stoics, guys like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. They kept incredibly detailed journals, not just listing what they did, but analyzing their reactions to what they did. You had early Christians developing the practice of confession, not just for doing bad things, but for having bad thoughts. For the very first time in history, people started to systematically watch, record, and try to manage what was going on inside their own heads. We're talking about the technologies that helped create the self. Well, there's another kind of technology right here on this page. If you're enjoying this little mind-bending journey, you can use the tech below to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. It's a simple way to tell the algorithm you want to keep digging into these kinds of ideas, and it really helps us keep the lights on here at the Chronicler's Desk. Okay, so an inner world now exists. People are paying attention to it. But for centuries, that inner world was seen as kind of a problem. It was messy, chaotic, something you had to control and discipline. Now we jump forward to the 18th century, when a radical new idea just explodes onto the scene. What if that inner world wasn't the problem? What if it was the answer? This is the game changer. And the main guy behind it was Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He just completely flipped the script. For thousands of years, the big idea was that civilization saves us from our brutish nature. Rousseau comes along and says the exact opposite. Civilization is what corrupts us. He claimed our true, authentic self is in our gut feelings, our raw intuition, and that those things are naturally good. All of a sudden, being a good person wasn't about following society's rules. It was about listening to that voice inside you. Now, Rousseau's idea was revolutionary, but it was still just philosophy, you know? It took the Romantic poets, people like Wordsworth, Blake, and Shelley, to take that idea and turn it into a cultural tidal wave. They turned his philosophy into powerful art that made people feel how true it was. They celebrated intense emotion, individual suffering, and personal breakthroughs. They made the inner self not just an idea, but this beautiful, tragic, heroic thing worth fighting for. And that leads us straight to the operating system of the modern world, what we call expressive individualism. This is the social imaginary we're all swimming in now. It's the deep-down belief that the entire point of your life is to look inward, find your unique center, and then show it to the world. That phrase, be true to yourself, it's the #1 commandment of expressive individualism. But the story's not over, not by a long shot. Because once you put this authentic inner self at the center of the universe, people immediately started putting it under a microscope. The Romantics thought of the self as a kind of spiritual soul. But the 19th and 20th centuries were about to give us a very, very different picture of what was really going on in there. In what felt like the blink of an eye, the old foundations just crumbled. First, you have Nietzsche dropping a bombshell. God is dead. Poof, there goes any external source for morality. Then Darwin comes along and explains where we came from without needing a creator. Then Marx argues that all our cherished beliefs are really just tools the rich use to control the poor. The heavens were empty. Society was a scam. Where was there left to look for truth? The only thing left was the self. And into that huge empty space steps Sigmund Freud. This quote just captures it perfectly. Freud completely changed the game. He argued that the inner self wasn't some pure romantic soul. It was a dark, messy basement full of repressed desires and hidden traumas. And the deepest, truest thing down in that basement, the real you, was your sexuality. And that's the final critical piece of the puzzle. The self is no longer just an inner space. It's a psychological space, and the core of our psychology gets fused with our sexuality. The deepest truth of who you are, your authentic self, is now understood to be rooted in your sexual desires and identity. And that brings us, finally, right up to today. This whole long, bizarre journey, from a Greek city-state to a Roman's private journal to a poet's masterpiece to a therapist's couch, all of it has created the invisible world we live in right now. I mean, just think about it. What's our culture's highest goal? It's psychological well-being. It's being happy, feeling good. When we have a problem, our first move isn't usually to ask what's the right thing to do based on some moral code. It's to look inside and figure out our feelings, often with a therapist. In our world, the biggest sin isn't breaking a divine law. It's being inauthentic. So let's bring it all the way back to the beginning. That deep, personal, urgent feeling you get that you need to find yourself or live your truth. It doesn't feel like an idea somebody taught you. It feels like a basic human need, like breathing. But it's not. It's the direct result, the cultural inheritance, of a very specific and pretty recent historical invention. You aren't just you. You're a product of this incredible story. Which, of course, leaves us with one last massive question. This idea of the self has totally defined the modern age, but our culture and our technology are changing faster than ever. So if we were the ones who invented this version of the self, are we right now in the process of inventing what comes next? What do you think that might look like? Let me know what you're thinking down in the comments.